How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Dark Souls for another mechanics video, where today we are focusing on some cut content. There are a variety of covenants in the game that offer the player a variety of very powerful offensive and defensive options as they make their way throughout the game, including perhaps the most powerful weapon buff in the game in Darkmoon Blade, to some powerful AoE miracles in the Gravelord Covenant, and some incredibly powerful defensive miracles if you join the Princess Guard Covenant. But what about the covenant that a lot of players seem to favor, the Warrior of Sunlight? This covenant, of course, is introduced to you by Solaire of Astora and is perhaps the most iconic covenant, granting you access to the Praise the Sun emote and allowing you to obtain some very powerful early game weapons, specifically Lightning Spear and Great Lightning Spear, with some farming for sunlight metals. But what if I told you that deep in the game's parameter data, there exists a system that quite possibly could have made this covenant the most powerful covenant in all three Dark Souls games? That's right, today we are going to be talking about Lightning Resonance and not Miracle Resonance. These two mechanics are very similar, but they have a very important distinction in that Miracle Resonance actually exists in the game, whereas Lightning Resonance does not. If you want to learn more about Miracle Resonance itself, I would highly advise you go watch Illusory Wall's video on Miracle Resonance to see what it does and what it entails. That being said, let's get into it with some brief mechanics that will help you understand some of the explanations that I'm going to provide in this video. The first and most important concept for this video is the concept of a spell motion value. These things might be called a variety of different terms depending on where you look, and in fact in the game's files they are not actually called motion values, but to borrow the more common parlance that I see throughout various Dark Souls game mechanics discussions, I'm going to be sticking with the term motion value. All that a motion value is a hidden value in-game that directly impacts the attack of your spell or weapon attack. For miracles, pyromancies, and sorceries, these are very easy to understand, as all you do for each spell, miracle, or pyromancy is multiply the spell motion value times the magic adjust stat of whatever your catalyst is. You take that number and then you plug it into the damage calculation formula, and you can find out the resulting damage based on whatever you used and the enemy that you're facing. To provide a little bit of context, I'll show some examples here on screen. The spell Soul Arrow has a spell motion value of 110, whereas Crystal Soul Spear has a spell motion value of 360. Now again, this is not a direct number that is able to be understood immediately when you are calculating damage, as the damage calculation formula is a little bit more complex than a straight attack divided by defense type thing. But in general, as your spell motion value goes up, you're going to be doing more damage to the enemy. The second is the concept of resonance levels. This is what the game internally refers to when it comes to both Miracle Synergy and Covenant rank when it comes to the Dragon Breath attack and the damage dealt by the Gravelord miracles. For a list of the miracles affected by the Miracle Synergy level, again, be sure to check out Illusory Wall's video on that, which gives some good examples on what that actually looks like. But for the miracle increases, it is a plus 10 to your spell motion value for each level of resonance beyond the default level. I'm going to use Wrath of the Gods as an example. At the baseline, no miracle synergy. That means there are no resonance circles and you are not wearing the Sun Princess ring. Wrath of the Gods has a spell motion value of 280, and for each level all the way up to level 4, your increase in spell motion value gets increased by 10 points. So at level 1 it is 290, at level 2 it is 300, and all the way up at level 4 it is 320. Now increasing your resonance level all the way up to level 4, which is incredibly rare and I doubt anyone has ever actually done that before, it is roughly a 14% increase in spell motion value. But again, it's important to note that due to the way damage is calculated, this will not just be a 14% damage increase. It will actually be a little bit higher depending on the enemy that you're facing, but you'll generally see at least a damage output increase of 15%, if not higher, especially when you're facing some weaker enemies. So I mentioned that, of course, you can get some increases in total damage output by leveling up in the Gravelord Covenant. You can increase your damage from Dark Moonblade by grinding out some of those souvenirs of reprisal. You can increase the effectiveness of some of your Dragon Torso and Dragon Headstone in the Dragon Covenant. And if you're in the Dark Wraiths Covenant, you can actually grab some more humanity whenever you're using the Dark Hand weapon. So where does that leave the Warriors of Sunlight? Perhaps the most iconic covenant, and after the Way of Light Covenant, probably the most heavily rostered covenant in the entire game. Well, in looking at some of the game parameter dumps, I have found what I believe to be some cut content related to that. If you take a look at some of the files in the player character attacks, you'll notice that IDs 30,007 all the way up to 30,030 are named Thunder Resonance Level 2, Level 3, Level 4, and Level 5. And some of the increases in total spell motion value that these Thunder Resonance levels bring about are beyond anything that we are able to use in-game currently. Based on the nomenclature, all of these adjustments apply just to Lightning Spear and not to Great Lightning Spear nor Sunlight Spear. But at the default level, which is named Level 2 in the game's parameters, you have a spell motion value of 270, which is equal to the spell motion value of Lightning Spear as it stands. And for each consecutive increase in resonance level, that being Level 3, 4, and 5, you would gain an extra 100 spell motion value to Lightning Spear. Yes, that's right. At level 5, which is the 4th level in the game's parameter files, your Lightning Spear would have a spell motion value of 570. To put that into perspective, Sunlight Spear has a spell motion value of 370, which is more than a 50% increase compared to Sunlight Spear in its current state. And again, remember that thanks to the way that damage is calculated in Dark Souls, this 54% increase in spell motion value will actually result in more than 54% damage dealt to the opponent. To give you a better comparison, I will go through in the game and change the spell motion value of Lightning Spear to match that 570 and compare it with Sunlight Blade using the same talisman to show you the rough increase in damage versus a random boss of my choosing. So as you can see that if the lightning resonance were implemented into the game as it is coded in the game's parameter files, the total damage output that you could be doing with your lightning spears goes way above and beyond anything that you can realistically expect to use in the game right now. Now that's all well and good, but the question remains, can we use this resonance to our advantage? Does it exist in the game? Sadly, I believe the answer is unfortunately no. I talked about the game parameter dump a little bit with the player character attacks. There is also special effects. These control a variety of different things about the game and will directly impact the amount of damage you do. These things also control some of the ring effects that are in the game, including the miracle synergy that you can get from the Sun Princess ring. And if you were to look at these special effects, you'll notice that special effects 40, 41, 42, 43, and 44 directly correspond to no resonance, resonance level 1, 2, 3, and 4 for the miracles that are affected, such as Wrath of the Gods. There are not, however, any IDs between 45 through 49, but 50 does come back into play. And if you're counting, 45, 46, 47, 48, and 49 is a total of 5 numbers, which would directly correspond to the number of resonance levels available in the game. So because these are missing, and there is not a direct special effect state, which I'm not really going to get into, but there are things called special effect states for lightning resonance. I don't believe that there's any way possible to actually invoke this effect when you're playing the game. So the fact that these are both not in the game and the fact that some of these spell motion values go above and beyond anything else in the game leads me to believe that this was cut relatively early in the process of testing the game out. It probably existed or might have existed at some point in the very early prototypes, but I have to imagine it was axed pretty quickly as they changed some things around with some of the miracles that you could acquire and some of the damage that you were able to do, but that's all speculation on my part. Speaking of speculation, let's get into another thing that might have been cut with the removal of lightning resonance in the game. More specifically, I think at one point there might have been a ring that increased your lightning resonance, effectively doing the same thing as the Sun Princess ring. Again, I mentioned the resonance level for the non-lightning and non-Gravelord miracles have special effect IDs of 40 through 44. Well, the effects of rings are also a special effect, and there are a group of rings starting at 2100 up to 2140 that seem to come in pairs as they share very similar effects. There are a group of 9 rings, and for example, the ring that has special effect ID of 2100 is the Gold Covetous ring, and then if you go to 2101, it is the Silver Covetous ring. So there are a total of 9 rings, and again, they stop at 2140, which is the Sun Princess ring, which increases your miracle resonance by 1 stage. But unlike all of the other rings in this general group, there is no 2141. My assumption in this case is that there was, at one point, a ring that was to increase the lightning resonance of your character when equipping it, effectively copying the effect of the miracle resonance from the Sun Princess ring. And I think this might have been found in the empty chest at the end of Gwendolyn's boss room in Gwyn's tomb. However, that is entirely speculation on my part. So the big remaining question is, of course, how or where might have this lightning resonance come into play in the game? And for that, there are really 2 theories that I think make sense. The first is that it would work almost identically to the Gravelord Servant or Blades of the Dark Moon covenants, where each level in the covenant would grant you an additional 10 points of spell motion values to those relevant spells. And this would allow, for example, Sunlight Blade to keep pace with Dark Moon Blade, and would allow your lightning miracles to really see a good uptick in power, especially after taking down so many bosses as the Warriors of Sunlight tend to do. And the other theory is that it would work like Miracle Resonance, where perhaps if you were to kill a boss, or you were to be in an area where a lot of Warriors of Sunlight were being summoned to help, such as in Anorlando against Ornstein and Smo, you may see lightning resonance circles or markers similar to the miracle resonance icon that you see pop up, and that would allow anybody in the Warriors of Sunlight Covenant to really juice up their damage, which would be especially helpful considering that whenever you're fighting bosses and you have summons, the total HP pool of the bosses go up by a very certain amount. Unfortunately, neither of these are concrete theories and is just my own speculation, but I think both of them make a whole lot of sense. It's unfortunate that this was never implemented, as I think it would have been a really cool way for a lot of players using the primary covenant that a lot of people tend to gravitate toward to lend some extra assistance for players in need, as the Warriors of Sunlight are, of course, known to be very jolly cooperators. I also think that if it were have been implemented in the game, the total amount of spell motion value increases that we would have seen would have been on par with both the Gravelord and Blades of the Dark Moon, where they would only gain 10 points of spell motion value as opposed to the huge increase of 100 as they are currently coded in the game right now. But that's just my speculation. If you have any interesting theories, I would love to hear them in the comments, both on how or where this might have been implemented, when it may have been cut, if you think that I am correct in saying that there might have been a ring at some point that would have increased your lightning resonance, or if you have any other thoughts or ideas on the concept of lightning resonance itself. So that's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed my little exploration into some of the cut content here in Dark Souls. I know I've made a couple of mechanics videos, but this is really the first time that I delved into something like this. It was interesting taking a look at some of the game parameter files, and to be honest, I couldn't really find anything about this anywhere. I'm sure some people have noticed it before, but I don't think it is very well known in and around the community. Again, I'd love to hear your theories in the comments below. Again, do you think I'm right? Was there a ring that was supposed to be in Anor Londo? Was this supposed to be like the miracle resonance signs that you can find in some areas? Or was this just supposed to be a straight damage increase for every rank in the Warriors of Sunlight Covenant? I don't know. Either way, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.
Oh, hello there. I will stay behind to gaze at the sun. The sun is a wondrous body, like a magnificent father. If only I could be so grossly incandescent.